If I could get your attention, please, we'll get started with our event. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could get your attention, we'll get started. Thank you. To the table over there that helped me out, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our webcast viewers. My name is Andrew Graham, President of the Canadian Club of Toronto and your host for today. Viewers, thank you for joining us. I think it's important to sort of acknowledge the irony at the heart of today's event, which is that this is a conversation about one of the most cutting-edge sets of technologies that we enjoy today. We're going to be hearing about researchers who are doing things really at the very edge of human knowledge, but we're talking about it in a format that really is as old as humanity itself. We're getting together around a meal to have the conversation. And I spend my days building a technology company, but I'm so proud to be involved with the Canadian Club because I think there is something irreplaceable, and especially in this age of technology, even more important than ever, about getting together over a meal to talk about important issues of the day. And I want to thank all of you for voting with your feet and being here today to be part of that, to play a role rather in that conversation. Thank you very much for being here. I just want to thank as well the sponsors who make events like today possible. We have PwC represented by Diane Kazarian and TD represented by Rizwan Khalfan. Thank you both very much. And I'd also like to thank EY, which has sponsored the participation of our youth and young leaders joining us from the Rotman School of Management. Where are you folks? Over there. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, EY. Now let me introduce our speaker. Artificial intelligence is very much a part of our lives, whether we realize it or not. It's no longer something that we talk about as a technology that's going to hit us in the future. It's very much part of our day-to-day. If you've looked at your news feed today or your Facebook feed today, or you've taken Uber or Lyft or a technology like that, you've used AI very explicitly. The Vector Institute is an independent, nonprofit organization. It drives excellence and leadership in Canada's knowledge creation and use of AI. The Institute leverages AI to foster economic growth and to improve our lives. It's on a mission to attract global talent to drive research excellence in deep learning and machine learning. Leading the way is Ed Clark, who's chair of the Institute. He is well recognized as a visionary business leader and innovator. After retiring as group president and CEO of TD Bank Group 4 years ago, he has dedicated his time to enhancing Canada's economic position. This included serving as the former Ontario Premier's business advisor. He's received a long list of honors throughout his prestigious career. Most recently, he was inducted into the Canadian Business Hall of Fame for his outstanding professional achievements and enduring contributions to Canadian society. After Ed speaks, Dr. Garth Gibson, the Vector Institute's first president and CEO, will sit down with some Vector leaders to answer questions. So please be ready to pose them to the panel and to Mr. Clark. It's a very accomplished panel. I can tell you from even the conversation over lunch, the IQ level on this panel and at our head table is really approaching the stratosphere. I was a little nervous sitting down for lunch given the bios of everyone at the table. And I'm really excited to be hearing from the panel. Let me give you a brief sketch of the biographies of the people who will be on it. First of all, Dr. Gibson returned to Canada at the start of the year to take on his role as the president and CEO of Vector. Previously, he served in many leadership positions with Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. Toronto is lucky to have him back. He'll be speaking with Dr. Marzia Gassemi, a faculty member of the Vector Institute with a PhD from MIT, with a focus on machine learning in healthcare. Dr. Alan Asparu-Guzik, another talented Vector Institute faculty member, who is also the Canada 150 Research Chair in Theoretical and Quantum Chemistry at the University of Toronto. Dr. Raquel Urtasun is the Uber ATG Chief Scientist, head of Uber ATG Toronto, and co-founder of the Vector Institute. We couldn't be more thrilled to have these 4 AI rock stars here to share their insights with us today. Ed, I'm pleased to pass the Canadian Club of Toronto's podium over to you and to your Vector colleagues. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It's just great to be here, and thank you all for coming. I think as you've now figured out, I'm the warm-up act, and so I'll try to go through my stuff, and then you get to see the real smart people. I have to tell you, it's kind of amazing. I've had a peripatetic career, but that I'd be standing in front of a group like this talking about the future of AI in Canada. Would you have thought 10 years ago you'd have a banker talking about AI? And when I think back, it was just 2 years ago that Tommy and Jordan approached me and said, we've got a group of scientists, and they think we can do something unbelievable, create an institution that recognizes Toronto's center at the AI. And when I think about that, I say, wow. But I also think about it's amazing of how much AI has changed for Canada and the world in those last 2 years. Now, among those changes was the launch of the Pan-Canadian AI strategy. And the centerpiece of that strategy was this very simple idea. Could we have a partnership of Canada's 3 national AI institutes? Vector in Toronto, Amy in Edmonton, and Mila in Montreal. And if we could do that, if we could have these work together, they could develop and attract the best AI talent in the world. They could help encourage and speed up the application of AI within Canadian companies and equally important in public institutions. And they could help scale Canadian AI startups to make them into globally competitive firms. Facilitating and funding the Institute is CFAR, who has to be noted was a very critical earlier supporter of AI research and remains today the leader of a nationally inclusive AI conversation and programs about social and political issues. In the 18 months or so since the launch, truly the achievements of our 3 institutes, I think, are just remarkable. At the same time, though, the global competition has risen, and we must now turn our attention to what it will take to sustain the long-term success and solidify Canada's position as a world leader in AI. This means taking advantages of opportunities to apply the technology, addressing the challenge presented by them, and ensuring that the benefits of AI accrue to Canada and to Canadians. Let me start by talking about the creation of Vector, where I had a very small role to play, helping him get going. Vector's establishment was really truly a magic moment of collaboration. The Government of Ontario, the federal government through CFAR, and businesses large and small, and AI researchers all aligned behind this idea of creating a top AI institute in Toronto. And the amazing thing was how fast they made it happen. Less than 2 years later, Vector has tripled the size of its founding faculty and has grown into a community of over 240 AI researchers. We have Vector faculty members from 8 institutions across Canada, from UBC in the west to Dalhousie in the east. And Vector's affiliated research span another 6 institutions. We've also signed sponsorship agreements with over 40 industry partners from across the Canadian economy. On the screen, we put up the names of our sponsors. They're an impressive and visionary lot, and we are determined to make their investment not only the right thing to have done, which it was, but a very profitable thing to have done. When we conceived of Vector, we had a fairly simple but powerful idea that we could create a high-profile brand that would help recruit and develop a critical mass of top AI minds, and that this nucleus of top researchers would initiate a virtuous cycle of talent attraction and then investor interest. And that, in turn, would lead to a denser AI ecosystem, more knowledge economy jobs, and a rising competitive advantage for Canada. Supply, in this case, would truly create its own demand. It didn't take long to actually start seeing the results. In the last 18 months, we've attracted major companies and investment: Accenture, Etsy, Google, Intel, LG, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Samsung, and Uber, to name just a few. And Canadian companies like Thomson Reuters, RBC, TD, notice I said RBC before I said TD, Manulife, got to keep in good with these guys, Manulife, Shopify, Deloitte, and Linamar have all committed to building AI capacity and acquiring talent. The Vector Institute has been among a series of catalysts, because it wasn't obviously just Vector, that have actually attracted over $1 billion of investments, which will result in the creation of 25,000 jobs. This growing collection of firms provides many career options for top scientists who may be considering a move to Toronto. Now, I have written elsewhere that some worry that attracting global firms will inhibit the growth of Canadian firms. I'm not going to dwell on this point, other than to say it's extremely hard to imagine that we can build a great ecosystem here that has none of the world's largest IT firms. Well, we've actually been in that situation. And what happened? It resulted in Canadian graduates heading south because they want to work in these firms. It resulted in what we know and talk about of the brain drain. Today, we have exactly the opposite. We have a brain gain going on. CBRE has reported that Toronto is the largest net gainer of tech talent in North America. From Silicon Valley, Seattle, Boston, New York, they don't compare with what's going on here. We're adding 10,000 new tech jobs, in greater people coming in than are going out. That's an amazing turnaround. And how did it happen? Well, it started with talented people coming here and staying here to pursue their careers, whether with foreign-owned firms or Canadian firms and institutions. AI-related investment in Toronto by the top 10 tech companies has only strengthened and reinforced this great dynamic. Now, as mentioned by Andrew, you're going to have a chance to hear a panel of AR stars who can talk firsthand about Toronto's draw. Why did they come? They are among the best of the best in the world. And they had the option of going anywhere in the world, and each came to Canada after declining choices from a worldwide portfolio. And as mentioned, Garth, also a repatriated Canadian, one of Carnegie Mellon's top academics, came here with the opportunity to run Vector. Now, I say these researchers chose Canada, and that's important, it's Canada. I've been emphasizing Toronto and Vectors, but the same talent and investment attraction and virtuous circle has been happening in Edmonton and Montreal as well. Last year, Alphabet's DeepMind set up its first foreign research office in Edmonton, citing the deep admiration and respect they have for the Canadian research community. Microsoft, Facebook, IBM, Dell, and Samsung have all opened or expanded labs in Montreal. Montreal-based Element AI attracted $135 million in Series A funding and now employs over 100 PhDs. Now, these investments have led to outstanding researchers relocating to Montreal from abroad and have given local grads a reason when they graduate to say, we can pursue our careers here. At the same time that we've been attracting talent, we're also now highly focused on developing it. Vector is working with universities to expand their master's programs for graduate students, with the AI skills that we know that industry and our public institutions have told us that they need. We have set ourselves a target to graduate 1,000 AI master students in Ontario each year, and we are going to get that done. All three institutes are connecting promising students to local internship opportunities. Amy is launching a program this January that connects Alberta STEM students with industry partners. Mila's professional master program in machine learning, and I won't get in what the difference between AI and machine learning is, think of it as the same for the moment, combines coursework, you can ask them what the difference is, combines coursework with an internship and daily guidance from the Mila team. Vector is connecting top talent with our industry sponsors at our flagship job and data fairs. The last one we had 500 students, a large number of which came from abroad just to come to Toronto to meet our sponsors and look for opportunities to live and have their career here. We're going to have another one in February. Vector has also launched the Vector Scholarship in Artificial Intelligence. This is an award we've granted to the most meritorious AI master students. Many from the inaugural cohort of scholars are here today, so all your sponsors can think, go make friends with them. 66 of the best and brightest students from 20 different programs across 9 universities in Ontario. Would the Vector Scholars please stand to be acknowledged? Our experience with these scholarships has been so successful that I'm pleased to announce today that we are going to make a long-term commitment to extend and expand the scholarship program. The second round of applications is set to open early next year. Scholarships, internships, and AI master programs at Ontario universities will be the anchor of Vector's new Raise AI initiative, which will act as a catalyst for workforce development. I would like to thank the Province of Ontario and Minister Smith for their commitment to this initiative. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, while we've done well to grow our talent space, the rest of the world hasn't been asleep. Indeed, Canada's first mover advantage is at risk. The world has determined that economic and political success will depend on a country's ability to adopt and apply AI. I need only quote Vladimir Putin. The nation which leads the world in AI will be the ruler of the world. Imagine quoting Vladimir Putin, but that's what this is, all the way to the top of countries. The people at the top, maybe there's a country near to us that the top guy doesn't think that way, but the country does. And that they have all determined that this is the critical technological revolution going on. So as a result, nations have started to run programs to have their AI strategies. Over 20 countries have announced commitments to AI development, and they're incredibly ambitious. The European Commission intends to invest €1.5 billion by 2020. Germany has said, we'll do better. We'll do €3 billion by 2025. And we know that China is clear. Anyone that's been there, anyone that talks to them, they have set a goal that they are going to be dominant in AI by 2030. The global race for AI supremacy is truly on. If we are going to win, we have to do more than just keep the talent machine going. We need to translate that talent into economic and social benefit. And there's only one way to do that, through leading the world in applying AI. As Kai-Fu Lee has said, visionary research, however important, is no longer the most important element in this race. practical implementation is. That's the name of the game. The ability to use AI to improve efficiency, to develop new products, to achieve better outcomes for customers, or in public goods, ultimately, what will distinguish the national winners. We've grown a base of talent here that can do that, but we cannot waste it. Vector is doing its part. Our researchers are educating people in industry through programs that give sponsors the chance to talk to our scientists about potential use cases and AI issues. Our researchers are also working with partners to apply AI. Consider our work in healthcare. Now, this is a sector where Canada has an enormous competitive advantage. We have a data advantage because we have single-payer health systems, and we have an incredibly diverse population. This is a dreamland for AI researchers. Together with our health partners, we're establishing secure computing infrastructure to study de-identified province-wide health data. Vector researchers are looking into important differences between diabetes types. There may, in fact, be more than just two, and how AI can better predict patients' risks before they need to go to the hospital. Other projects include working with financial service regulators to develop protocols for AI use, and working with sponsors to determine ways in which they can jointly work together with us to tackle important societal issues like combating fraud or human trafficking. AI can make a huge difference in these areas. We need our companies and our institutions to experiment with similarly promising applications related to their core businesses. But unfortunately, one of the truths in Canada is we're not always so great at actually adapting technology. In many places, we're really good at the fundamental research, but we're not as good as other nations are at applying those researchers. We simply can't let that happen with this fundamental revolutionary technology called AI. An important goal that we have to do in terms of determining Canada's success going forward is the degree to which we're successful at fostering and keeping startups that commercialize AI research. Here too, unfortunately, we face a major shortcoming of Canada in the past years. That is the ability to scale up firms has been a fundamental economic challenge for Canada for some time. And helping startups grow is only the first challenge. We can't have our startups scale up only to be sold off and have their IP and talent leave to another country. Not if we expect to compete in this new leg of the race. Innovation begins in the head office, and the resulting economic benefits accrue to home countries, not host countries. If we expect to keep the economic benefits of talents that we're investing in, then we must create the conditions to grow Canadian firms to be world competitors and make sure that they stay here. So that means we need things like an IP policy designed to ensure Canada does get the benefits of its IP work. We need venture capital firms that can't just go a short way, but go all the way to creating these firms. We need public procurement policies that open up to smaller firms and don't just default to large firms. And we need to make sure that public data becomes an asset that small firms can easily access and use to grow. Canada needs to mobilize to crack the code of this core issue. And if we do that, we really can sustain our competitive advantage. Earlier I said that Vector started as a magic moment of collaboration among many stakeholders. Success going forward now depends on sustained commitments from all of them. Companies need to begin and continue to aggressively experiment with AI. Like most things in business, it really isn't about high-level strategies. It's about doing, failing, redoing until you finally get it right. There needs to be a commitment from top of every organization to make that happen. Using AI will be a competitive necessity going forward. Every company has to take this seriously, because if they don't, they should know their competitors are going to. And companies also have to get better at training their employees. An absolute legitimate worry about AI is among the employees is, are this going to be used to destroy my job, including white-collar jobs? Business must be open about the changes that are underway, and they have to find ways to increase the skills of employees so that they see themselves as winners in this shift. The burden of rethinking work roles and retraining has to be shouldered by companies. You know, governments can play a role, but the truth is companies and public operating groups are the ones that really have to take the lead. They're at the coalface. They know what new skills need to be developed. And for them to do that, they've got to understand what AI can and can't do, and they have to try to promote the idea and make it feel real that AI can take away the drudgery of work and actually make jobs more meaningful. Linamar CEO Linda Hasenfratz wrote a great article in the Globe. If you haven't read it, go Google it up. And she described how AI changed her company's competitiveness. And as a result of that, they actually were able to grow their workforce with a shift towards jobs that were more interesting and which they could pay more for those people to do those jobs. We should take that model and replicate it across all companies in Canada. Now, there are absolutely legitimate worries about AI, and they have to be addressed. They include destruction of jobs, the creation of undetectable fake news, the misuse of personal data or facial recognition software, decision-making tools that could reinforce societal biases, cyber warfare. When you listen, it's truly scary. These issues cannot be wished away. Just saying, stop the world, I want to get off, also isn't going to work. Our counterparts will just take advantage of our lack of competitiveness, and then we're going to have even greater job losses. So we have to figure out how to have a thoughtful response to these issues. Once again, I think Vector can play a small role here. You know, our scientists are citizens too, and they're acutely aware of these issues. That's why Rich Zemmel, our director of research, devotes his time to finding ways to prevent algorithms from reinforcing biases. It's also why Mila developed the Montreal Declaration for Responsible AI, one of the leading documents guiding the ethical development of AI research and applications. But our institutes can't do this alone. We all have to be aware of the potential negative applications and figure out how to deal with them. For the government's part, Canada needs smart, proactive policy regarding AI. There is a gap, a fundamental gap, between policymakers and technologists. Policymakers don't really understand technology, certainly at the level that they have to. And technologists don't understand policy at all. So we have to figure out as a country how we can help close that gap. What we can't do is outsource that policy development to the rest of the world. We as Canadians have to be architects of our own destiny and find solutions that reflect Canadian values. And so what will we need from governments? Well, we're going to need them to help have well-informed AI policy. And we're going to need them to continue to invest in the education. And we're going to need their continued support for our institutes so they can attract top practitioners and their families from around the world. And we need to continue to have immigration policies that welcome talented people from everywhere. The great news that I sense our political leaders actually get this. The three institutes have had extensive conversations with these topics with provincial governments and the Government of Canada. And they get the need for a long-term strategy. including support for the 3 institutes and for the computing and data infrastructure that supports AI. They also recognize, though, the need to aggressively deal with the issues around AI if they are to maintain public support for the technology. Our leaders in Ottawa have specifically underlined their determination to do, quote, what is necessary to keep Canada's first mover advantage. That's exactly what we need, gritty determination to do that. I'd like you to come away from today with a few key messages. There is incredible reason to celebrate what Canada and our institutes have done so far. We've created the conditions for a virtuous cycle of talent attraction, increased investment, the creation of good-paying jobs. Canada is truly seen around the world as one of the countries leading the technological revolution in AI. But now many countries are also committed to being leaders in this field. The big powers all see this as a critical element in their future. In order for us to achieve our potential and solidify Canada's place as a leader, we need to make a serious long-term commitment to keeping the talent machine going. We need to commit to applying AI in public and private institutions. We need to commit to cracking the code on how to help our startups become sustainable, world-class competitors that remain in Canada. And we need to commit to addressing the issues that will become commonplace as AI becomes more widespread. And most important of all, we need to commit that we're going to ensure that Canadian workers and citizens have the opportunities and the security they need, and that all of them truly share in the benefits of AI. The great news about Canada is we have the people to do just that. Thank you very much.
I'll do that. Yeah. Okay. Get a microphone? I guess I'm already mic'd. All right, thank you, Ed. I'm Garth Gibson. I'm the President and CEO. I want to start by saying that both I enjoyed Ed's speech, but we owe a great debt of gratitude to Ed. Ed has been a fearless leader and has helped us build Vector in no time flat. What you heard today was where we're going, but I want to tell you a little bit about last week. Last week we were at the NeurIPS conference. It is the largest conference in machine learning and carries some of the most important results. That show worked well. There was chairs given out to a number of the Vector faculty and the other faculty by CFAR. The Prime Minister and the G7 was consulting, and Marzia, you participated in that. Our researchers got a large number of papers published, including an unfair number of the oral papers presented compared to the world's institutions. Yes, we got to catch up to Google, but we're working on it. And 2 of the best paper awards, 2 of the 4. So for one institute in the world, having half of the best paper awards is a phenomenal accomplishment. Yeah. Now I bring you 3 of the other researchers. These are people who have all come to Canada to do research in machine learning and its impact on the world. And I want to start by asking each one of them how their research is having a big impact on the world. We'll start with Raquel.
Thanks, Garth. I have to say that this reminds me of winter in Canada. It's really chilly today. Cool. So let's see. So I work in self-driving cars, which is one of the canonical applications of how AI is going to transform the world, right? So the transportation that we see is not something that can scale, right? A lot of people are moving to cities, right? Cities are getting more congested. Cars are basically not very well utilized. 95% of the time, cars are parked 20% of our cities is just parking spots. That could be actually parks where you can play with your children. More than 1.3 million people every year die. This is like 1 every minute, right? Just in traffic accidents. And 95% of that is actually due to human error, right? So AI can really transform transportation that we see. And we see the future as something where transportation will be electric, right? Will be green. Will be shared, right? We will stop buying cars. We will actually share the resources of the planet, and will be autonomous. And Canada has the leading research institution in self-driving cars, AI for self-driving cars. And I think it's up to us to really maintain this and continue with the leadership. And it's very exciting how this is going to transform for the good, the way we live.
Thank you. Alon?
Okay, so I work also on self-driving things, but I work on what we like to call self-driving labs, which is the idea that if you think about any scientist and how they do science nowadays, it hasn't changed as much as you think from 200 years ago, in the sense that they go to the lab and they do things by hand and look at a chemical and just pass it one way or the other. So what I work on is try to rethink the laboratory from the bottom up. And if you were to build a laboratory from scratch, you can imagine it actually doing a lot of the things in an automated fashion, but more importantly, making decisions in an AI-informed way. So what is the next best experiment to make is not an obvious choice. So AI can help us say, well, based on the experimental data I have so far, this is the next experiment I can make. And why am I so interested in accelerating discovery? Because as you probably heard, the planet is warming up. Climate change is just recently in a paper in Nature is even worse than we thought. We only have about 12 years to actually solve this issue. And a lot of the problems related to climate change have to do with materials. So if we don't rethink how we can discover materials quicker for solar cells, energy storage, water filtration, etc., we're going to have huge issues in society. So I believe that we not only need to change our cities, we also need to change basically all our infrastructure for energy production and consumption. And that will require AI, and discovery is a piece of it, and that's what I'm focused on.
Thank you, Alon. Marzia?
I do machine learning for health, and the reason that I wanted to go into health is I realized during my PhD that we don't actually know what it means to be healthy. And what I mean by that is we define being healthy as an absence of interactions with the healthcare system. So you're healthy when there's no data on you. And so when you ask a doctor, what should I do to be a healthy person, they legitimately don't know, right? There are very few studies that cover the kinds of people that we have to treat on an everyday basis. And so when you're asking a doctor to make a decision about what sort of treatment works best for a person who looks like me, or Alon, or Raquel, or Garth, they actually have very little evidence to rely on to make that judgment. And making matters more complex, often there are factors involved in how you choose treatments for people that you may or may not want to consider. So talking about medicine means we're talking about treating humans, right? And as Ed said, having an inclusive healthcare system is very important because humans are biased, doctors are humans, so doctors are biased, which means when you're treating an individual, you may be biased in how you provide their care. But there are also, it's not simple. You can't exclude gender, you can't exclude race, you can't exclude age like you can for hiring a person, because those variables could be really important for deciding what treatment to give somebody. And so being able to take all of the data about an individual and say, conditioned on everything I know about this person, this is the appropriate kind of treatment, and it'll lead to these better long-term health outcomes, is really impactful.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple questions here. So how do we see the current job description changing as companies adopt AI more? Job distribution changing? Well, I think Ed already addressed this with a quote from Linamar's experience, and that is that while you may automate some functions, you create opportunities for the people in the companies that understand what the company needs to do to innovate and to have more exciting and interesting jobs, and they have done that by automating without losing jobs and perhaps paying more as a result. So that's what I hope happens. I do believe that there'll be rough spots along the way, and I agree that the companies need to be engaged with thinking that through so that their workforce comes with them and the public as a whole. What does a future where AI has reached its potential look like? What do you think the future looks like when AI has reached its potential? Raquel?
Thank you for putting me first on the spot. I guess the question is, what does it mean for AI to reach its potential? I think what we should think of is, where do we want this world to go? And how do we, make it happen, right? AI is one of the components that seems to be one of the weapons to get us there, right? But there might be some other things on the way. I think the world should be a world that is, where everybody actually has access to all possibilities, and every single person focus on what they are good at, what they like at. And there is no more, I'm a privileged person, therefore I have the opportunity to do that. I hope that the world will look like that, and I hope we can do something to make that happen.
Marzieh?
I think that AI is a cool tool. I mean, it's machine learning is obviously something that I find really interesting. But just as we've been talking about, trying to separate out, this is really cool research from figuring out how it's most impactful in practice. I think there are if everybody is trying to do this, right? Not everybody is going to have the same do-good attitude, right? And so I think it's really important that we focus on deciding what we want AI to do, right? You can give, there are many things that you can say, I already do this. I already know how to do this task. I just don't like doing it. I want AI to do it better. And we can make you a calculator, right? But if there's something that you can't do and you'd like to be able to do it, it's possible that we could do that too, like an X-ray. Right? You'd never be able to see somebody's bones without an X-ray. Maybe you didn't even know you could do that, right? And so I think figuring out what those things are and what things we never want machine learning or AI to be the final say in, right? I don't want, it depends on how cute the robot is, but I don't usually think I want a robot telling me bad news, bad medical news, right? I think there's a lot of evidence that's shown that human connection is incredibly important in healthcare. And so having that kind of insight about these are the kinds of things I'd like to build, calculators or X-rays or anything else, right? Those, I think, will help us realize true potential by having some direction that we think is both responsible and interesting.
Thank you. Alon, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think I'm going to follow up on what Raquel is saying. The World Economic Forum calls this era the fourth industrial revolution, right? It's saying that AI, robotics, and other tools are going to generate a lot of wealth for the planet. And at the same time that we were having a previous industrial revolution back then when we started just using steam engines, a big question is how we're going to distribute the wealth that is going to be generated, who's going to get it, and how. And I think that question is equally important. The future will empower us and will give us this fantastic discovery. I really want to have a $20,000 machine that prints any chemical that you want. Think about that. You will be able to print a perfume or a drug or poison, okay? Just think about the possibilities of having a molecular printer in your desktop. So it will enable a lot of wealth for the planet, but also you have to think about how the wealth is going to be distributed and how people are going to actually benefit from it. So I think the future empowered by AI also has to think about what is the social counterpart and how they're going to play together.
And I assume that means that you three would participate in those conversations on how AI should be held responsible to society.
Definitely,
Yes.
yeah.
I think we're pretty much out of time here, so we'd like to pass off to the Canadian Club. Let's.
Thank you. Thank you for that terrific conversation. I think we could have, I'm sure there's many of us that would love to go a lot longer and hear more from all of you. Thank you for your work, and thank you for choosing to come to Toronto and for choosing to come to Canada. It's a it's really terrific that you're all here, and sorry about the winter that's about to come. Thanks again to you. Thanks also to Ed for the great remarks early on. Really exciting to hear about the vision that led to Vector and the vision that sustains it. Really exciting, I think, for Toronto and for the country to have an Institute of Vector's significance and success based here. I'll just close by mentioning a few events that are coming up in the new year. First of all, we have our 42nd annual Outlook Lunch, which will take place on January 8th. We have some more events on the theme of innovation. For any of you who's interested, we have Ray Reddy, who's the CEO of Ritual, which is a Toronto success story in tech, with us on January 16th. And we also have Rana Sarkar, Canada's Consular General in San Francisco, here to talk to us about Silicon Valley and the impact it can have on businesses here, and that's on January 29th. I'd like to extend another round of thanks to today's event sponsors, PwC and TD. And I'd also like to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's event. Just maybe one final round of applause and thanks to Ed and to all of our speakers and panelists and Garth. Thank you. And finally, thanks to all of you for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of 2018, enjoy the holiday season, and hope to see you again in 2019. Thank you.